Hey, it's Mike Byrnes with another episode of Business Bests. I'm excited today to be talking about event marketing. It's a great topic, and I think with AI and how it's going to replace a lot of what people do from their day-to-day jobs, being in front of people and that human element is going to be really important. So event marketing can actually even be more successful in the future. Plus, there'll be all kinds of advancements behind the scenes. I will say, the good thing about event marketing is you can kind of know if you get an ROI pretty quickly, right? You know the guest list of the people that came, and you can kind of see did they convert to become a client if they're a prospect, in the 3-month period, maybe 6-month period, depending on how long you drip on them and move them along, however long your sales cycle traditionally takes. So that's a good thing. You kind of know the ROI pretty quickly. The bad thing is there's an expense that comes with events. And it's not just the credit card bill that you rack up if you put it on your credit card. It could be the human element that goes into it, because events are labor intensive. It takes a lot to plan an event, to do all the day-to-day, the prep before, the cleanup after, the follow-up, all that. And so if you have your human capital dedicated to doing the events, that's an expense, right? You have to factor in one, what are the man hours that those people are working, of their overall compensation. If they're spending 10% of their time on events, that's obviously should be factored into the ROI. The other thing too is you just got to be careful with any kind of marketing spend. Doesn't have to be events, but with events, that you know what the opportunity lost cause is. So if you have marketing dollars and you get a 10% return on investment, that's a good thing, right? But if you could have spent it on doing something else and you could have got a 25% return, there's an opportunity lost, right? So you have to kind of know your whole marketing mix, what's working, what's not working, and actually hold all those disciplines of marketing accountable. They all will in some ways play together too. And on the back end of this video, I'll talk about how marketing supports events. Maybe I'll do it as we go through. So I just wanted to do that and start off with, the real good thing is you can know if there's an ROI pretty quickly. The bad thing is there's an expense and it actually is time consuming. So those resources can actually draw down on the success of an event. So hopefully you factor all that in and come up with a winning strategy. When I do this, a lot of times I'll talk with my clients about 4 event types, and I kind of think of 4 quadrants of a box. And the first box are you do an event that you can be the expert in, right? So for financial advisors, they would be the expert. They can speak on whatever topic they want. Maybe they have an economist. But it kind of fits into that, what their expertise is, right? So in that case, financial services something. The next category is, education, but it's not in that same profession, right? So this is where you might bring in somebody that talks about nutrition or gives some kind of health benefit conversation, author of a book or whatever it might be. That's that second category. Third category would be lifestyle, and this is really the biggest category to me. So you can do events around taking people to baseball games or the symphony or something along those lines. It's really kind of an entertainment category if you want to wrap that up into one category. And then that fourth bucket would be philanthropy. And the nice thing is philanthropy can sometimes blend into these other categories. For example, you might do a golf event, so that's that lifestyle category, but it might actually be a fundraiser for a charity. So everybody that comes donates some money, and you roll up that money and you write the check afterwards, and that's how you can combine multiple boxes. There's a time and a place for combining. You could probably, in theory, combine all 4 boxes, but you might want to test them all separately too. So marketing is very scientific. You can do these different A/B tests and see what works with your client base and prospect base too. And so what you'll find is some might work with a sub-segment of who you're trying to bring in as your target market, and some events might not work. So the more that you kind of figure out that niche and break it down, the more likely you are to come up with a successful event strategy. Back to that 4-quadrant idea. Start small. They don't have to be gigantic events, and test and just see the responses within your client base, and you'll kind of get a sense of what's popular, what's not popular, and then you're off to the races. You get just a little smarter every time you do this. I recommend kind of having an event strategy for the year too, and so when you build this out, you might do category 1, which is that education that you provide, and that's January. And say if you have a monthly kind of cadence to this, then the next thing would be, maybe that's that outside education, outside of your expertise. Third category might be that lifestyle, and the fourth might be charity. And as you go through those things, that's where you kind of test and learn, right? And there's a seasonality to some of these things too. So that third category, the one that I said it's kind of the biggest, that's where you would put your traditional holiday party. And that's, again, you could have yourself do a half an hour speech, presentation, whatever you want to call it, up front. So you're kind of combining the holiday party and your best practices and your knowledge. I don't recommend that you do that, but that's something that you could do, and that's how you could combine them. So when you do that calendar, maybe brainstorm some seasonality to it. If you're going to do things outside, obviously those categories need to be plugged in your summer months, or if you're down the south, maybe you do them in the winter. And flip-flop what we do up here in New England. But that 4-category strategy is really important. And I would think about how you can develop ideas and test and learn. Within each of those categories, there's thousands and thousands of event ideas that you can come up with. That's the nice thing too, is that you can kind of build on what works, and then something that doesn't work, you can learn from it and then throw it on the scrap heap, right? And you're off to the races on the next new idea. With event marketing, 2 of the things I see often are related to expense and size. So expense, they actually will have this big gala, and they invite every client, and they don't see an ROI, right? Because they're not getting that friend maybe, or they're not getting the prospects to come. And so their event strategy takes a lot of dollars and time. It's as complicated as a wedding, and you almost need a wedding event planner to kind of have that expertise to kind of choreograph everything and get it through. And everyone that goes to those events usually is really happy, but you're not seeing the ROI. So that's one thing. The size of it doesn't always have to be this grand scale thing. You can have something that is smaller in nature, just taking a client out to play golf. I'll stick with that example. And actually, the nice thing about a foursome is you can have it filled with 2 other people. And so that's where maybe that small little intimate type of event can work, right? Same thing with dinners. Like maybe just fill a table that's small and intimate. And I could come up with all kinds of small ideas too, going to a game or whatever it might be. So the size can vary. The second one that I see is, so that the first one can have a big, gigantic expense, right? If you bring in a whole bunch of people and have this big, like wedding type of gala. The second thing that I see that there's a lot of fault in the event marketing strategy is that they don't get the prospects. So they already have very happy clients. The clients are raving fans. They're never going to leave, but they're not giving referrals. And so the event strategy should not necessarily keep them super happy. Hopefully you can do that on your own. The event strategy, and if you do need that, keep that event strategy in place. But if you don't think you need that, do some tweaks to get that return on investment. What that might look like is bring a friend events. And oftentimes I'll see that people have this great strategy to bring friends, and they kind of count on their client base to bring those friends. But the ratio might be 30 people that are clients to 1 prospect. And they become pretty expensive, and a lot of time goes into them, but they're not delivering the ROI. So what I like to do is work with my clients to flip that ratio on its head. If you are a professional and you are going to be working a room, what's the right amount of people to be in an event? You kind of have to figure that out first. If you have a team of people that can work a room or sit at tables and mingle and all that, That's where you want to figure out what the right ratio is. And if you have a 10-person event and you have 20 people that want to do it, you can do multiple events, but keep them small and intimate. So that's something, if you're constrained by size and those issues, you can get around it. But what does that look like? The one caveat or the one exclusion to that is if you're presenting. And if you're presenting, people feel like they get to know you, and so in some ways, they feel like they're interacting with you, even though they might not get one-on-one FaceTime. And so that's where you might have a larger audience, and you're getting in front of more people. But let's just say 8's the magic number, and you're going to be there, your client's going to be there, and so then you would ideally want 6 prospects there, because that's the ratio flipped on its head. So rather than the 30 clients to 1 or 10 clients to 1, clients to prospects, you're now going to have 1 client to 10 prospects, right? So you're flipping that ratio on its head. I got hired once for someone that had just done a gin tasting, and they knew that their clients liked gin, and sure enough, they were right, had 30 people come in to do this expensive gin tasting. They had a great location, they had a professional that came in and represented all these different choices, talked about how they were made, and it was a successful event for the people that liked gin that came. The problem was that advisor, he forced the idea on the clients, and they liked it. Force is a tough word. He brought the idea to them all baked. And this is where, when you're coming up with an event and figuring out what your clients will bring their friends to, you don't want to have it all packaged up. And so I like to talk about it like ingredients to a cookie. If you gave them that cookie all cooked, they don't have a lot of choice in the matter, right? But if you kind of brought the ingredients to them and then they cooked the cookie, they're going to be more likely to want to share and have people interact, right? What does that mean for events, right? So instead of cookies, you might come to them and say, hey, I would love to meet other people like you. You've been so good at introducing people to me in the past. I would love to build out an event strategy that helps my business, but really helps you. But you have enough of a knowledge about who they are, what they like. So back to those 4 boxes for events, what would they actually want to really drive people to come? And that's a fault of yours, so shame on you if you don't know your clients really well to know what of those 4 categories they would be so excited about to fill the room. Sorry, I don't mean to be hard, but like that's an important step. Like you need to know your clients really well to know what they would be passionate about to fill the room. So you find out what that is, and then you kind of bring the idea to them, like the ingredients of the cookie, and then you kind of let them run with it. And that they almost feel like it's their event. And they're the ones that like are really passionate about getting people to come. And you give them enough of the business knowledge of why you're doing this. There's a cost to this, and this is part of how you grow your business. But they're super excited that you're actually supporting the passion that they have. All right, let's take this and back it up a little. So you have those 4 quadrants. You know your client really, really well, and they're very passionate about a nonprofit, some cause that they really want people to know about. Maybe it's something that happened to their family or that they're struggling with all the time. And so you want to come to them and say, hey, would you ever do an event or help me do an event that would actually raise awareness to solve this issue, or maybe fundraise to help that charity be more successful? And you give them just enough to say, oh my goodness, I would love that. And then you kind of put the framework about like, here's what I could do, and here's where we maybe could do it, and this is maybe what the outcome would be. And before you know it, you've kind of given them the ingredients to the cookie, but they put it all together, right? And because they're on the ground floor of this idea, they feel like it's theirs. At least they're going to feel like it's a shared idea. And in some ways, you're kind of bankrolling them to come up with an event. It doesn't work with every client, but there are some clients that will take this kind of ingredients to the cookie and they'll be off to the races, mixing it up, and putting it in the oven and having something come out terrific. So when you think about your event strategy, realize there's two big hurdles that you have to get over. One is a time and dollars. Are you putting too much in? Is it this big, gigantic event? Maybe there's a way to have a much smaller event strategy and do more of them more frequently. That traditionally is the advice that I give on the consulting side. And then secondly is if you have happy clients, do you have to keep them happy with events? It's nice to maybe do something once a year, but if you are going to spend money on your clients, think about how you can maximize it so they're happy, but you're actually going to be happy too because you're getting that positive ROI. And at least meeting prospects, eventually you're going to want to convert them too. How does this all work? I'll give you an example. I worked with a financial advisor. He was new to a high-end tennis club, so like a country club for like golf members and such. This was tennis. And he had one client that worked there, very close client. And he was trying to think about how can I get to know more of the members? And so him and I brainstormed some ideas, and we came up with this approach and ended up being a home run. What he did was he went to that top client and said, hey, and this was the important thing, he needed to know really what that client was passionate about. Obviously, he knew that the client loved tennis, but there were some other interesting things that we brainstormed, and I asked a ton of questions, and I uncovered that his son was autistic. And so I came up with the idea of bring it to him, so it's those loose ingredients, it's not all baked, but it said, hey, if my company sponsored a tournament for a tennis tournament, and I gave away some prizes and then did like a little bit of a reception after to celebrate the winnings, and everyone could kind of laugh about who did well and who didn't, and that kind of setting. But I know your son really well, and I've done financial planning for him because I'm an advisor, and I really want to support you and the initiatives that we do around that category. Would you ever be open to doing an event where we charge a small amount of money to have people come, of which I'll cover the expenses of just the tournament, but they have a minimum that they need to be involved. They need to put in basically a donation. And it was wildly successful. This advisor's client took the idea and ran with it. He basically co-ran the event. My client got a lot of exposure to these really wealthy tennis players, and that was his target market. That was part of the reason he joined the tennis club, but he was having no real access, like limited access to just kind of meet them once in a while. And by the way, my client wasn't the best tennis player, so he wasn't really like wowing them with his tennis game. He was just a good guy, right? So now the ratio of that, it wasn't gigantic. I can't remember, maybe 20 people participated, of which he had a huge ROI on it. He bought a trophy, he got a sign, and he spent enough to have like a nice cocktail hour with past hors d'oeuvres after the fact. And while the whole tournament was going on, he's mingling and he's kind of meeting people, and so he's kind of doing that like nice politician shaking hands type of thing. And then at the end, didn't do a whole speech of what he does, but he just made it clear that his company sponsored this. And it was the first time that they had ever done something like this at the tennis club. And it was just one more way that they could all do what they enjoy, that commonality. It helped his client. So from a client service standpoint, even if the event was going to kind of crumble and fail, he wowed his client and brought them closer because not only was the tennis involved, but he was supporting his son and the troubles that their family struggles with. And that made that connection, unbelievably strong. And then obviously got exposure to all kinds of prospects that were in his target market. All kinds of events like this that you can kind of come up with, but you do need to do that digging a little. You need to ask the questions. You gotta find out every single thing about your client. That's a nice thing about me when I'm consulting. It's not just like cookie cutter advice. I actually will sit down with my client and have them say, hey, who are your best clients? Maybe who's giving you a lead in the past? Who are those people that, maybe within the last 3 years have given you a lead? Print out a list. Let's look at them in Excel. Then let's talk about them one at a time. And then tell me every single thing you know. And we'll come up with the ingredients. And let's say you have 10 of those clients that are raving fans that would fill a room for you. Brainstorm, what are those ideas that you would come up with to say, hey, here's the ingredients of what I'm thinking. Would you ever want to do this event with me? And let's say you bring 10 clients this kind of idea and 2 of them are off to the races, so only 20%. Wow, the ROI can be really powerful on those events. So figure out who are those people you would go to first on something like this. Now back it up and say, why do bringer events kind of fail is you force the idea on them, right? And you kind of obligate them to come, and then they kind of feel like, oh man, I got to go to that event, and it's not something I really want to go. And so the RSVPs are not that great. And then, oh, by the way, you get some people that said they were coming, but 70% of them don't show. Like nothing worse than that. Then you have like a prepaid all these expenses for meals or whatever the cost might be, and then people don't show. I guarantee the person that does the event and takes those ingredients, he's gonna show, he or she is gonna show, and they're gonna strong arm all those people on the guest list to come. And you can help facilitate the communications, and we'll talk about that in a second. So hopefully an idea that you might run with is know your client better than anyone else, figuring out what the right ratio of people is, and then create the ingredients just enough for that client to say, hey, I would love to do that event, and then that client fills the room. And wow, you get some really great exposure. I'll give another example, and again, it really goes back to knowing your target market better than anyone else. Another financial advisor focused in on women and realized that there was a multi-generational tier. They were pretty good. They were older women, so their daughters, in this case, were older too. Like they were adults, like out of college age, raising their own kids. And so there was kind of multi-generational types of clients. And when we did the work around this, they really cared about their daughters. They were proud of them. They wanted to help them succeed and all kinds of kind of cool things. Sometimes family dynamics were an issue. We kind of brainstormed about that, and things fall apart. The next generation, so it's G1, which in this case the advisor had as a client. G2, maybe they had as a client, maybe they didn't. But the G1 and G2 communication within the family sometimes falls apart. People get too busy. Frustrations happen. And so this work that I did with my client, she was talking to all her best clients, and a lot of them were women, and realized a commonality, like a common thread. And so I like to give this example is we kind of came up with an idea that would allow for a bigger turnout, but would be something that all of the people that were invited kind of felt like it was their event too. And so we actually came up with a Mother's Day idea. And so the Mother's Day brunch idea was, I think, the weekend before Mother's Day. And only women were involved, and actually flash forwarding to the event, there were men that worked in the company, and they were allowed to come for the very beginning meet and greet, and then they were kicked out of the event. I think they were allowed to come at the end. But so it was a women-friendly event, and mothers were encouraged to come with their daughters. If they have multiple daughters, they could bring them. And interestingly enough, this Mother's Day approach, they were encouraged to invite another mother and their daughter too. And they could actually fill out a table if they wanted. And that was kind of the strategy of the Bring a Friend event. And what was really interesting is it made all of the women feel so appreciated. They love this idea of bonding with their kids. Sometimes the real Mother's Day gets messed up. Grandkids have sports, or there's a geographic issue, or whatever it might be. Or sometimes there's multiple grandparents, 2 sets, and so there's 2 mothers, and so sometimes they got to alternate and go back and forth. So this event was hosted at like a nice country club that had a nice breakfast brunch kind of feel to it, more of a brunch in between breakfast and lunch. They had a nice meet and greet. They actually did have someone that kind of spoke about family dynamics and how important it is to have a good mother and daughter relationship. They actually were encouraged to write, they had a little printout of cards, and the card said, this is the favorite thing about my mother, and the mom's got a card that said, this is the favorite thing about my daughter, and then they put them in a bucket, or I think it was like a nice glass vase, and the speaker kind of read through them all. And then they were encouraged after, there was kind of a confidential, nobody attached a name to what was being read, but they were encouraged then to create a dialogue of what they loved about their daughter or what the daughter loved about the mom. And wow, was this event so successful. So brunch is not the most expensive thing in the world. It's not super cheap, but they kind of limit the exposure to alcohol, which can really drive up prices. I think maybe they had mimosas or something like that, but then they, I think, had a cash bar if they wanted to get something different. But the timing of it, there weren't a lot of people drinking, so it's kind of like your juices and coffees and teas and that type of stuff. A nice meal, not too extravagant, but there was a cost. I had said that the ratio before is you kind of want to be able to interact. My client, they actually brought their daughter too, so that was a little bit of an interesting dynamic. But that would change the ratio of one of those big round tables that you'd have at a wedding, right? Like how many people can you have? 8 to 10 people. And so they actually had other people within the organization that were mothers too, and they facilitated this nice area. They kind of all represented a table and made sure the dialogues went smoothly and never talked about what they did. They will say that they said part of financial advice is, preparing the next generation to pass on legacies, and so they kind of went into that estate planning kind of bend to it, but they didn't talk about investments or anything like that. And I can tell you right now that event was a gigantic success, and that advisor does it year after year after year. And I've heard that others have kind of mimicked that idea too and run with it. Again, it's knowing your target market, knowing who you want to work with, and then kind of creating something that's unique to them. Back to creating a calendar. Now you know if Mother's Day is one of those things you want to do an event for, boom, you drop that in May, and you look at the weekends before or after Mother's Day. You can actually maybe have it on Mother's Day too, but there's a risk of that being a complicated time. And then figure out who else are those sub-segments within your client base. So widows might be another example. If you work with enough mothers, at some point they lose their spouse. So what would you do with widows, and how's it a little bit different than Mother's Day? And this is where you might have a client say, hey, do you know other people that are kind of grieving? So again, you're bringing the ingredients to them with an idea. You're not baking the cookie. You're saying, hey, I'd hate for them to be alone during the holidays. So you kind of have the Mother's Day in May. What's the other end of May in the calendar? If on the other end of the 12-month spectrum would be November-ish, right? And so maybe have something around Thanksgiving, like, hey, let's do something like a Friendsgiving. And you go to the widows with the idea, and you encourage them to invite other widows that get really lonely over the holidays. And you kind of make it fun. So ideas that I've worked with, mostly financial advisors that bring this to their clients, is, hey, we're going to do this event, or we're thinking about doing this event. Would you mind maybe promoting it? Do you know some people that would want to come? I always feel so bad for people that are alone during the holidays. And the benefit would be, everyone brings a different recipe, right? And we actually will make a cookbook out of it, right? Everyone will kind of bring their ideas. Maybe we'll have a little secret ballot, and everyone will vote on whatever the best side dish is. And maybe depending on the size of your house or like what's the facility that you would need, maybe you just kind of have the bare minimums, right? Like you have the beverages and you cook the turkey, but the potluck part of it is the success of the event, right? And that's a wonderful event. You kind of use the same framework of what's the right ratio, how do you have exposure to people. You don't want to have too many people because then the expense is not going to have an ROI. But I can tell you people that go to those types of events feel so appreciated, and it really depends on your target market. So with widows, you might bring them an idea to go travel. because they hate traveling alone. Or you might think of when else are they the saddest, like Valentine's Day or whatever. And you can kind of start to think of all these really interesting event ideas based on you knowing your target market better than anyone else, and then drilling down and knowing your actual clients better than everyone else too. This is Mike Byrnes. It's been another episode of Business Bests. Thank you for tuning in. I really appreciate it. Thanks a lot.